There is a moment that happens to almost everyone, usually somewhere after 40, where you catch your reflection unexpectedly and feel a quiet shock, not at a wrinkle or a grey hair, at the disconnect. The person staring back at you does not match the person you feel like on the inside, and that gap, that strange distance between who you are and what the mirror shows, is not a cosmetic problem. It is a psychological one, and Carl Jung understood exactly why it happens and exactly what it costs you when you ignore it. Most people dismiss appearance as vanity, as something shallow that serious, intelligent people should not care about. And there is a version of caring about appearance that is genuinely shallow, the version driven by insecurity, by comparison, by the desperate need for external validation. Jung would have recognized that version immediately as persona inflation, the condition where you become so identified with the image you present to the world that you lose contact with everything beneath it. But there is another version, a version that has nothing to do with vanity and everything to do with integrity. The version where how you present yourself to the world becomes a deliberate expression of the psychological work you have done internally, where your outer form reflects your inner order, where the care you take with your appearance is not an act of performance but an act of alignment. Jung called the image you present to the world the persona, and he spent his entire career studying what happens when the persona falls out of alignment with the self, when there is a fracture between what you show and what you are. And what he found is that this fracture does not stay contained to your appearance. It bleeds into everything: your energy, your confidence, your relationships, your capacity to lead, create, and connect, your entire experience of being alive. This is not about looking younger. This is not about impressing strangers. This is about the psychological consequences of neglecting the vessel that carries your consciousness through the world. And those consequences are far more severe than most people realize. Let us start with something Jung observed that modern psychology has only recently begun to confirm. The relationship between self-image and psychological energy is not metaphorical, it is structural. Your brain maintains an internal model of who you are, a self-concept. This model is not static. It updates constantly based on the data it receives, and one of the most powerful sources of data it receives is visual. What you see when you look in the mirror, what you see when you look down at your hands, your body, your clothing, what you see in photographs, in reflections, in the reactions of others to your physical presence. When the visual data matches the internal model, when what you see aligns with who you believe yourself to be, the system runs smoothly. Energy flows. Confidence operates as a background process rather than something you have to consciously manufacture. You move through the world with a kind of effortless authority that other people can feel even if they cannot name it. But when the visual data contradicts the internal model, when you look in the mirror and see someone who does not match the person you feel like inside, the system creates friction. Not dramatic, obvious friction. Subtle, constant friction. The kind that drains you without producing a clear symptom you can point to. You just feel slightly off, slightly heavy, slightly less capable than you know you are. And this friction compounds. Day after day, week after week. Each morning the mirror sends data that contradicts the internal model, and each morning the psyche absorbs a small dose of dissonance. Over months, over years, this accumulation produces something that looks from the outside like a slow decline in confidence, in energy, in ambition. People around you might say you have mellowed or slowed down or become more realistic. But what has actually happened is that the constant friction between your inner truth and your outer expression has worn down the psychological machinery that produces vitality. You did not lose your energy. It is being consumed by a conflict you did not know you were having. Jung would have described this as a form of psychic dissonance, a state where the outer expression and the inner reality are pulling in different directions. And he observed that this dissonance does not resolve itself through willpower or positive thinking. It resolves only when the fracture between inner and outer is addressed directly. This is why some mornings you wake up, take care with how you present yourself, and feel like a different person. Not because the clothes changed your psychology, but because the alignment between what you see and what you feel removed a friction that was silently consuming energy you did not know you were losing. Now, here is where this gets deeper than any grooming advice will ever take you. Jung understood that the persona is not inherently false. Most interpretations of his work treat the persona as a mask to be removed, as if the goal of psychological development is to walk through the world completely unfiltered. That is a misreading. Jung was clear that the persona is necessary. It is the interface between your inner world and the outer world. Without it, you cannot function socially. You cannot communicate. You cannot navigate the complex demands of professional and personal life. The problem is not having a persona. The problem is having one that was built by someone else. Most people's persona was constructed in childhood and adolescence. It was shaped by what their parents approved of, what their peers rewarded, what their culture demanded, and it was frozen in place somewhere around the age when the pressure to conform was highest. For many people, the image they present to the world at 50 is still fundamentally the image that was approved at 15, updated superficially but structurally unchanged. And this is where the appearance problem becomes a psychological crisis. Because you are not 15 anymore. You have lived, you have suffered, you have grown. You have integrated experiences that fundamentally changed who you are at the deepest level. But your persona, the version of you that the world sees, has not kept pace with that growth. It is still wearing the costume of someone you used to be. The disconnect you feel when you look in the mirror is not about aging. It is about outgrowing an image that no longer represents you. The reflection feels wrong, not because you look old, but because you look like someone whose interior has changed while their exterior stayed frozen. This is what Jung meant when he talked about the persona becoming rigid. When the mask cannot flex and evolve alongside the person wearing it, it becomes a prison. You are trapped inside an image that no longer fits. And every day you spend wearing an outdated persona is a day you spend telling your unconscious that the growth you have done internally does not deserve to be expressed externally. Your unconscious hears that message, and it responds accordingly, by withdrawing energy, by dimming the vitality that should be flowing through you, by creating a subtle depression that has no obvious cause but that sits in your chest like something unnamed and heavy. The cure is not a new wardrobe. The cure is a new relationship with your own image. Let me be precise about what this means, because precision matters here, and vague self-help advice will not get you where you need to go. The first thing to understand is that your appearance is a language. It communicates before you open your mouth, not just to other people, to yourself. Every morning, the first psychological interaction you have is with your own reflection, and that interaction sets a tone that reverberates through the entire day. If what you see communicates neglect, your unconscious registers neglect, not as a thought, as a feeling, a low-grade heaviness that sits beneath your awareness and colors every interaction, every decision, every moment of creativity or connection for the next 16 hours. You may not know why the day feels flat, but your unconscious knows. It saw the data first thing in the morning, and the data said this person has stopped trying. If what you see communicates intention, care, alignment between inner state and outer expression, your unconscious registers something entirely different. It registers coherence, and coherence produces energy the same way dissonance drains it, not through motivation, through physics, through the simple psychological reality that a system in alignment generates more power than a system fighting itself. The second thing to understand is that this is not about perfection. Perfectionism in appearance is just another form of persona inflation. It is the ego's attempt to control how others perceive you by obsessively managing every visual detail. Jung would have seen that immediately as a compensation for inner insecurity. The more rigidly perfect the exterior, the more likely it is hiding an interior in chaos. What I am describing is something fundamentally different. It is the practice of honest expression, of asking yourself each morning, not how can I look perfect, but does what I see reflect what I have become? Does this exterior honor the interior? Is there coherence between the work I have done on the inside and what I am showing on the outside? Sometimes the answer is as simple as standing straighter, not performing perfect posture, but inhabiting your body as if you actually live there. Most people over 40 move through the world as if they are apologizing for taking up space, shoulders rounded, eyes down, body contracted. This is not physical deterioration. This is psychological withdrawal made visible. The body expressing what the psyche believes, that its best years are behind it, that its presence is no longer welcome, that it should take up less room. Jung would have recognized this immediately as a shadow expression, the rejected vitality, the abandoned confidence, the suppressed aliveness that was pushed underground, because at some point the culture communicated that intensity and presence and physical power are reserved for the young. And you believed it, not consciously, unconsciously, and your body obeyed. Reclaiming your appearance is not about fighting age. It is about refusing to let your body express a belief that is not true. You are not less vital than you were at 30. You are differently vital. The energy at 30 was raw and undirected. The energy at 45 or 50 or 60 has been refined by experience, sharpened by loss, deepened by every confrontation with the shadow that you survived. It is a more potent energy, a more dangerous energy in the best sense of the word. And if you do not give that vitality a physical form, if you do not let your body express the depth and power and hard-won wisdom that exists inside you, then you are committing what Jung would consider one of the most common forms of self-betrayal, living beneath your own truth. You have probably met someone in their 50s or 60s who carries more presence than most people in their 20s, not because they look young, because they look alive, because their body is not apologizing for existing, because the way they stand, move, and present themselves communicates something that age cannot diminish. I have arrived at myself, and I am not hiding. The third thing to understand is that this practice has consequences that extend far beyond how you feel about your reflection. Jung observed that the persona functions as a bridge between the individual and the collective. When your persona is coherent, when it accurately represents your inner state, other people unconsciously trust you, not because they analyze your outfit, because they sense alignment. They feel the absence of dissonance. And in a world where most people are projecting one thing and feeling another, the presence of someone who is genuinely integrated is magnetic. This is why certain people command a room without saying a word. It is not their clothes, it is not their physical attractiveness. It is the coherence between what you see and what they are. There is no gap, no performance, no effort to convince you of something that is not true. What you see is what exists. And that integrity of presentation produces a form of authority that no title, no wealth, no social status can replicate. When you begin treating your appearance as an expression of your inner development rather than a performance for external approval, this coherence begins to develop in you. People respond differently, not because you look better in the superficial sense, because you feel different to be around. There is a gravity to you that was not there before, a presence that comes from the simple fact that every layer of you is telling the same story. You have experienced this from the other side. You have met people whose presence changed the room before they spoke, and you have met people who were impeccably dressed, but who felt hollow, empty, like a beautiful frame around a blank canvas. The difference was never the clothing. The difference was whether the exterior was expressing something real or compensating for something missing. Jung would have distinguished these two states immediately. The first is individuation made visible. The second is persona inflation. And the distance between them is not measured in fashion sense or grooming habits. It is measured in psychological depth, in whether the exterior grew from the interior or was constructed to hide it. This is what Jung meant by individuation expressed through the body, the process of becoming who you truly are, not in your journal or in your therapy sessions, but in the physical world, in the way you stand, in the way you move, in the way you present yourself to every person and every situation you encounter. Your body is not separate from your psyche. Your appearance is not separate from your development. They are one system, and a system that is aligned produces power. A system that is fractured produces exhaustion. Now, I want to address the resistance that has probably been building as you listen to this, because there is a voice inside you, and inside most people, that insists this is shallow, that real depth means not caring about surfaces, that truly evolved people transcend concern with the physical. Jung would have challenged that voice directly. He would have asked where it came from. Who taught you that the body does not matter? Who told you that neglecting your physical presence was a sign of depth rather than a sign of fragmentation? In many cases, that voice is itself a shadow expression. It is the rationalization of someone who stopped caring for themselves and then built an intellectual framework to justify the neglect. It is the ego protecting itself from the discomfort of confronting the gap between who you have become and what you are showing the world. Genuine depth does not reject the surface. Genuine depth expresses itself through every layer, including the physical one. The most psychologically integrated people Jung encountered were not people who had transcended concern with their appearance. They were people whose appearance had become a natural, effortless extension of their inner state. There was no conflict between depth and presentation. Both existed in harmony. Both served the same purpose, the expression of a complete human being. If you have reached a point in your life where your inner world has grown, but your outer presentation has not kept pace, you are living in a state of fracture. And that fracture is costing you more than you realize. Energy you cannot account for. Confidence that should be effortless, but requires constant manufacturing. A subtle sense of inauthenticity that you cannot quite identify, but that follows you through every day. The fix is not complicated. It is not expensive. It does not require becoming someone you are not. It requires the opposite. It requires becoming, visibly, the person you already are, letting the outside catch up to the inside, giving your growth a body, giving your depth a face, giving the work you have done the respect of being visible. That is not vanity, that is completion. And Jung would have called it one of the final and most overlooked stages of individuation. The stage where everything you have become is no longer hidden inside you. It walks through the world. It enters rooms. It shakes hands and meets eyes and stands fully upright in a body that has finally been given permission to express the truth of who lives inside it. Start tomorrow. Not with a makeover, not with a shopping spree, with 30 seconds of honest attention in front of your mirror. Look at yourself and ask one question. Does what I see honor what I have become? If the answer is no, change one thing. Just one. Stand taller. Iron the shirt. Choose the jacket that makes you feel like the person you are on the inside. These are not small acts. In the language of the psyche, they are declarations of alignment, and alignment is where all real power begins. If this shifted how you think about the relationship between your appearance and your inner world, subscribe to this channel. We explore the psychology that most people avoid because it asks you to change, not just understand. Hit the notification bell because what comes next goes even deeper. And in the comments, tell me this. When was the last time you looked in the mirror and felt that the person looking back was actually you? Not a tired version, not an outdated version. You. If you cannot remember, that answer is the beginning of something important. And naming it here might be the first step toward closing the gap.